Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Of course, if you've been with us a while, you know that we're Tyler and Douglas Gabriel, but we like to pretend we're Thomas Paine and Betsy Ross as we decode Trump tweets. And we've got a lot.
Pretending. We're not pretending.
Yeah.
You are Betsy Ross. You sow the new memes, and I am Thomas Paine in the ass of the globalists.
Actually, when we saw that Alex Jones was just an actor putting on this act, we thought, well, we can do that too.
Look, if Bill O'Reilly can just give commentary, so can we.
Okay. All right, folks, we're going to do the tweets of March 16th and 17th as usual. I have the tweets and the link below in the description box. But we're not going to rush because Thomas has so much to say. So we're going to do what we can. If we need to cut off, we'll provide you with a second video. But I'm telling you, we have got some great stuff here. Are you ready to read between the lines and over the top and under the bottom?
Teeing on here, and yes, we in fact are in direct contact with the White House.
Yes,
we
have
absolute direct contact. We have proof, and the proof we have with every single tweet he sends out. That is the contact, folks. That's the new news agency. Bye-bye, Fox, but hello, Trump tweets, or whatever he goes to next. I think he should open his own station,
No, it needs to be held independent. We want to make sure that no matter who holds the office, that we're getting good, accurate news and truth, all right? So the first tweet reads, Google is helping China and their military, but not the U.S. Terrible. The good news is that they helped crooked Hillary Clinton and not Trump. How did that turn out?
Well, the way that turned out, he's not mentioning this because he's nice, I'm not. So here's what he didn't say. He didn't say that Obama and Hillary gave it all to the Chinese, to the point that we had all of their microchips in our military and had to take them out. As soon as Trump came to power, he had all the Chinese microchips taken out because they all had kill switches, they all had backdoors, they all had sabotage. And then he's basically stopped the number one telecommunication company and fought number two and fought them back, fought the Chinese back. But you know what? Eric Schmidt didn't. He went over there, he sold out, and he created basically what you'd call a new internet, an internet that can screen anything coming in and completely scrub it before it gets into their internet, which isn't an internet then. It's an intranet. By the way, Russia's doing the same thing.
And so then you wouldn't know about, like, a false flag shooting in a foreign country.
Oh, no, they control the news so tight in China. It's unbelievable because Eric Schmidt went over there and lied, came back, said that he wasn't ready to release this new form of control, the social credit system in China. No, 1 million people are dead because of you, Eric Schmidt, and your filtering of those who are not truly part of the Central Committee of China's communism. And so you killed 1 million, another 1 million are interned. 23 million don't get to travel this year because of the new system you set up called Dragonfly, which is the social credit system. And really what it is it's an intranet that is used even more of a weapon than our internet has been, and Facebook has been used, and the social media systems have been used here in America. So what is going on over there is that they are already taken over. You have complete totalitarian communist takeover through the technology given by Google and by Facebook and by James Breyer and by Uri Milner and all the rest of the culprits that stole Leader Technologies' ideas, turned them into social media, and then now use them not for social media, but for social control, social credit. Now, I just want to go a bit further into what he mentioned here, because in helping China, if he wouldn't have stopped Qualcomm and Broadcom giving the cheapest bid to put 5G everywhere in America, the Chinese, in 1 year, they were going to install this in 1 year, would have taken over America. They would be, first off, killing us through the 5G. Second off, they'd be killing all future generations through killing the eggs by simply turning it to a certain frequency. And we would have been cooked and fried by China. So he stopped that. And basically, we have to remember that Google is there to penetrate, infiltrate, surveil, and sabotage everything. And you have to remember that it has been turned into a super weapon in China, and China's our enemy, and now that it's perfected there, it will be turned on us. When Eric Schmidt said Dragonfly won't be ready for use in China in 2 years, what he really said, and I said it back then, and it's been almost a year, That's what he actually meant was it'll be completely deployed and implemented and completely controlling every American as soon as 5G goes in 2 years. The only thing holding it up was and I just told you, China was going to put in all 5G in 1 year for the cheapest price anybody ever saw, but they were then going to use it as a weapon against us. We had to take all their technology out of everything. And then when he refers in this beautiful tweet to Crooked Hillary, he is talking about, and he can't say this, the template that she paid for through the GSA when she was Secretary of State. She actually used the government to create the plans and the programs and basically the subroutines, the AI you'd call it, but what is called the template to win the election, paid for by us through the government, that she then used to manipulate Facebook. And this is all very well known. We've documented it all. And of course, there was a $1.5 billion gift given by Eric Schmidt for Hillary's campaign. And of course, there was the $86 million that Obama spent on the Strategic Communications Laboratory takeover of our what's it called, Global Engagement Center. And so we can see here that what he's implying in between the lines is the criminality that is literally showing that China is our fantastically worst enemy we've ever had, and he is defeating them single-handedly, well, with his group of people who are doing the tariff deals, because money controls everything. So he is actually defeating China, kicking them out of our technologies, kicking them out of spying on us, kicking them out of stealing our IP, kicking some of their top officials, what was it, the top official of Huawei was recently arrested, and SEC and all kinds of other charges against a telephone company, Chinese telephone company. Because why? Absolutely monopolistic, RICO, antitrust, you name it, extortion. China's doing this in every single country they have a deal. And they almost had America completely. Had Hillary become the Queen of America, that would have been it.
Now, I just want to say, no response. Folks, we're fully aware of what happened in New Zealand. We watched the video. We're not going to make any comment on the YouTube video. If you're one of our regular readers, we've already made comments on our website about that. Okay, the next tweet is, how is the Paris Environmental Accord working out for France after 18 weeks of rioting by the Yellow Vest protesters? I guess not so well. In the meantime, the United States has gone to the top of all lists on...
I was just going over a study, many studies on the climate crazy. I don't even have a name for it. I mean, these people think it's an apocalypse when in fact their statistics have nothing to do with reality. They literally say in their documents that the sun has nothing to do with our weather. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Anyway, this is the kind of thing that he is standing up against with the Paris Environmental Accord. We also pointed out that that's basically a Tavistock control mechanism. The Paris Environmental Accord was written by one person. We pointed out she was the teacher of Jeff Bezos, or the new Jeff Bezos, because the old Jeff Bezos, unless they cut his ears off and put on new ones, that ain't the old Jeff Bezos. But the new Jeff Bezos was controlled by her and was her puppet. And then basically, look what she's done. We would have spent $5 trillion on the Paris Accord. We were the only people donating money in the first year. America was I'm going to repeat that. People don't understand.
No, we understand that this...
500 million?
But that this whole environmental thing is just a way that the globalists are trying to redistribute wealth, or the remaining wealth that's left in the economy. I mean, who doesn't see that at this point?
Well, people don't get this part, and I've never told this to anybody before. The $500 million that we were paying to the Paris Environmental Accord, follow the whole document all the way down, the money goes almost all to China. In other words, we were going to give another $500 million to China. That's all the Paris Accord was going to do. Why? Because it was to take nations that were basically producing and manufacturing and cleaning up their manufacturing. You're going to try to clean up China? How about the plastic rice? How about the radioactive children's strollers?
They just wanted the money. They just want our money. That was their ploy to get our money from us.
We are so better off without that Paris Environment Accord. He saved us $5 trillion in one day by saying no. Now, I just want to point this out. The yellow vests are just the beginning. That was Macron's first action on the Paris Environmental Accord. That's why Trump is saying this. Read between the lines. T and on. We know how to read between the lines. Here's what he's saying. Macron is an idiot. He's worse than an idiot. His first action, which was very, very mild, which is simply a gas tax. Now wait till you get to Crazio's gas tax that would have to come with their new fascism and the Green New Deal. They just began the first tiniest step, and now they have a French Revolution. And I'm very disappointed that the French are taking 18 weeks to get Macron out of office. He is an idiot. He is literally sold France down the tubes. There is nothing he's done that's been good. During his time, he's been, for a very large part of it, he was in financial, he was in martial law, basically, a form of financial martial law. He was in martial law for a long time, and he kept receiving the migrants. And now they don't report anything. Anything a migrant does in France is not reported. It's reported a little bit in Germany. Here's how it's reported in Germany. First report I've heard probably in 6 months that was true. They had a festival in Germany. This happens also in France all the time. And 650 women were sexually assaulted. And only a handful of these migrant, supposedly immigrants, which are really invaders, were even charged. I don't even know if any of them went to jail. 650 rapes, basically, and nobody goes to jail. That's Europe, and they clamp down on free speech through the Atlantic Council over there, and George Soros's money that has been behind that has it tied up. You barely get to hear any news from that. So here's the reality. The Paris Environmental Accord cannot go forward. One tiny step forward is causing a new French Revolution. And
well, let me just add here that we want revolution all over the world, and we want a peaceful revolution that Gandhi would be proud of. And we're recommending that everyone around the world, you step up on Saturday at noon and you put on your vest. If it's yellow, maybe if you're a hunter, it's orange. And wherever you are in a public place, put that on. Now, we've already started seeing this where some of our listeners and readers did it on Saturday. They gave me feedback that people wanted to know, well, what are you doing? And so that gave them an opportunity to explain, well, I'm wearing this orange vest to say that no more communism, or I am not supporting the murder of newborns. Whatever it is that you feel passionate about, put that vest on. It will invite others to ask you why you're wearing it. And for those of you who can get in larger groups, if you can go in front of the Capitol at noon, maybe you're just a visitor, you're just touring Washington, can you take a vest with you and at noon show up at the Capitol? And the reason why, this is time, folks, we have to let these corrupt politicians see with their eyes that we are angry and we are massive and we are not silent anymore. And if you do, it's sort of like, the walk away campaign is now becoming the stand your ground campaign. Make your stand and say, this is where I will not go any further. Then send us your videos and your pictures, and we would love to load them up on our American Intelligence Media site so that we can help support all the patriots around the world to protect their nations from the ravages of globalism.
Absolutely. Amen, Betsy. Amen. Because when we get out and we show the public through our citizen action who we are and we stand our ground, that is a referendum. And people in America seem to forget that there are two things you can do. One is called a recall and the other one's called a referendum. When you get out and you use your feet, that's a referendum. But you can also write a referendum. And the referendum can be any law you want. And you can put it forward as long as you have enough signatures. Now, here's what needs to happen to a bunch of these crazios. I won't need to name them. You know who I'm talking about, the freshman Congress people who basically need to leave. They need to have a recall. The people of their district, the people they represent, need to recall them.
Oh, really? You think the Somalis in Minnesota are going to recall the raghead wearing Ilhan Omar? No, they're not going to. So where do you expect this recall to come from?
Then their neighbors need to write a referendum stating that that area has been taken over by Sharia law.
By terrorists. And
they are, and that's the number one place. The place she comes from in Minnesota is, I believe, I've been seen this many, many times. It's the largest group of Somali terrorists who have provided more ISIS soldiers from America than any place else in America. And so what you have there is an Islamic fascist terrorist district. And their representative is speaking that way with her anti-Jew rhetoric. And then what do? They go back to the common denominator and they say, no, we're not going to sanction her for saying that. We're going to say that no one can say anything bad about anybody, including her.
And then that impinges on my free speech rights.
Free speech doesn't exist because of that.
Well, let's go on to the next tweet, if you don't mind. Okay. This one is new evidence. It's a retweet. New evidence that the Obama-era team of the FBI, DOJ, and CIA were working together to spy on and take out President Trump all the way back in 2015. Now, this comes from a transcript of Peter Strzok's testimony. He says it's devastating. Hopefully, the Mueller report will be covering this. Well, of course, if you've been listening to us for a while, you've known this actually since 2015. Why is it new today?
Well, only because the new released documents give us yet another indictment, basically, proof that obstruction of justice was happening. And we get this from Strzok and Page and from Orr and from Nellie Orr and from James Baker and from the little that has leaked about Andrew McCabe. So what we're really seeing is that we're finding out that people are waking up to the fact, which has been a fact for a long, long time, that Hillary loved Russia and that she was not only in bed with Putin, but they had a baby. And we pointed that out the other day. That's the high-tech city that she built she forced our high-tech companies to go there and literally build manufacturing centers to build things like hypersonic missiles, to build all the crazy new things that the Russians are bragging that they have. That was a gift of Hillary Clinton.
Well, this is treason is what it is.
That was her baby.
It is treason. Everything that has been done so far that we're seeing is treason. When are we going to start talking about treason and start working to resolving the problem that we have with these criminals?
Well, it is treason. And it's also the Mueller Act because she received money as Secretary of State, and she gave money to Putin like crazy. She built a uranium plant for $450 million. She gave him our entire uranium stock. She allowed them to use, along with Obama, allowed them to use Oak Ridge to enrich our own uranium through the Uranium One deal. She got $145 million to one of her foundations. Bill got $200 million to another foundation, and then money in perpetuity. So what she got there was she had a baby with him, and she gave him all the technology that then she could at some point, or anybody could at some point, stand back and say, aha, the Russians are beating us in weapon manufacturing. We need to manufacture more weapons. They have a weapon we don't have. Wrong. Raytheon built the hypersonic missiles, rockets, and missiles, and they don't work yet. And so to brag that there's no way to intercept them, and then that then causes another Cold War and more buildup of the military-industrial complex, which makes weapons for both sides. Raytheon is building weapons for Russians and us, same weapons, so we can go to war with each other. And then, wait a second. Think that through, folks. Let's just stop Raytheon, and then there wouldn't be these new weapons.
Okay, well, we got the Mueller report, the big nothing burger coming out, and the...
Wait a second, I'm not doing it.
Well, I know, but I want you to say that the Congress everybody voted to have it released, and President Trump said, yep, we need to have it released. So was it going to be released? Made public?
Well, I'll go there in a second. I'm not sure I have all the tweets, and so I'm using my what would you call it, intuition on some of these. So I just want to say that remember that Page, now we know and we see it again, and through behind closed door testimony, said that Obama knew everything and that he wanted to be updated frequently on this attack on Trump during the election, when he was a candidate, when he was president-elect, and when he was president, literally right up to the moment of inauguration, because we heard and saw Susan Rice's email to herself, which was to get herself out of trouble. Her alibi, she didn't write a book yet, her alibi is right there in that message saying that Obama, Biden, her, let's see who all else was there.
Well, Samantha Power, Valerie Jarrett.
The whole group of them.
Look, again.
Discussing the dossier and then saying, make sure everyone gathers all the information you can on Trump that might be bad, because we didn't get any. So he gave an all full court press. He called in everyone and said this to the public. He caused NSA raw data to be allowed to everyone. And that was to cover up for the masking that Susan Rice had done, and that they had very clearly ran the opposition, as well as the opposition research, right out of the White House.
Well, this is treason, and we need to start pressing forward with some kind of tribunal, trials. I don't know how it's going to play out, but folks, this is egregious treason. And not only that, we have already uncovered the British part of this, the espionage that was occurring on the other side of the pond.
Okay, so Betsy, are we going on to the vote of 420-0? Is that what we're talking? Okay.
Well, I'm just saying, the Mueller report's going to come out. It's going to show that Trump clearly was not colluding with the Russians, and I'm saying we need to start moving forward with charges of treason for all these people. And I don't want to hear perjury charges, and I don't want to hear slapping on the hand. Hillary Clinton massively sold out the United States. She needs to be the first one to go down.
Yes, she sold us out to communist China, so she's a communist. She sold us out to and basically brought communism, Walmart.
And this is why you want to put your vest on at noon on Saturday, if for nothing else, to show that you are sick and tired of this and you want her to be arrested.
You see, Hillary set up Walmart as a way to take over all manufacturing and then the delivery of those cheap manufactured goods to America through a centralized system, through just one company, one corporation that made more money than anybody else. Okay, that's called a monopoly. She worked it through China. She'd already worked it in Arkansas. Then, what did she do? Then she went to Russia. And she set Russia up for basically becoming as advanced as we are. Now, we've done that repeatedly with Russia over history, so that's nothing new. But what she did was she was in bed with Putin, gave him everything he needed to make him look as if he was an evil competitor with us, when in fact he is not. And we can squish Russia with just the sanctions we put on Nord Stream 1. So what we really have here is the fact that the Mueller investigation isn't going to reveal anything, and there's going to have to be another special counsel or either investigations in the DOJ.
I don't think we need any more special counsels. We've provided enough evidence. We just need to see the corrupt DOJ, which is largely staffed by senior executive operatives, but we need somebody over there to step up and start making the charges. Why do we need another investigation that'll string this out for 2 years? Citizens out here, we have the evidence. We've sent it in to Barr. We've said, get off your duff and do your job. Oh, let's finish these tweets.
Well, if Barr does his job correct, unfortunately, Barr is going to be working with a lot of SES members he's worked with before.
We need to call the SES out as domestic enemies, terrorists. They're bureaucrats that sit back there and not only thwart the will of the people, but they are also working against us by working with the Brits to try to overthrow Donald Trump. These are enemies.
Yes, and the Mueller report, when it's revealed, will show nothing because they've leaked every single thing they had that was damning. There's nothing left to reveal. That's why Adam Schiff is now backing off of impeachment, backing off of the fact that he said he had absolute physical 100% proof that Donald Trump was conspiring and working, colluding with the Russians. That is a lie. He's backed off of that now. Joe Nadler is backing off because of his Russian connections have been revealed, and his 81 subpoenas for people and documents is backing off. And Elijah Cummings is even backing off. So Pelosi doesn't want to do impeachment. Why? There's no evidence. The last speck of evidence was the hope that Adam Schiff might not be lying this time and he had some evidence, or that through this new investigation, which will be the 8th one, they will, spend a ton of money again and find nothing because there is nothing to find.
All right, now these next 3 tweets, I'm going to read all together. They're related. So, if there was knowingly and acknowledged to be zero crime when the special counsel was appointed, and if the appointment was made based on the fake dossier paid for by Crooked Hillary, and now disgraced Andrew McCabe, he and all stated no crime, Then the special counsel should never have been appointed, and there should be no Mueller report. This was an illegal and conflicted investigation in search of a crime. Russian collusion was nothing more than an excuse by the Democrats for losing an election that they thought they were going to win, and this should never happen to a president again.
Shouldn't have happened once, but it's happened at least 14 times that I know, where the rogue CIA, our unbelievable Office of the Director of National Intelligence, literally go and create coups, regime change they called them. And this was just common practice until Trump. And they were doing it here in America. It was a coup d'etat. It was some people call it the Purple Revolution. So we must stop that. So there should never happen to a president again. We haven't stopped it yet. We need to stop it now. And there need to be indictments and people need to go to jail so that this cannot happen again, will not happen again, and that we are showing the world that we have a mechanism to create trust for we the people in these agencies that are completely defiled, and even the Inspector General's reports are defiled, and nothing more than keeping the SES in place and the bureaucrats in place and the status quo in place. Now, the Mueller report. Let's go back. Everything he's saying here is true. We've said it from day one. We said it before he was even appointed. We knew what was going to happen. Why? Because Comey had perjured himself and committed so many crimes. The only way out was for a special counsel to supersede the director of the FBI and the DOJ and give him immunity. And that's what it seems has happened. Is that going to be in the Mueller report? Well, if it is, guess what? That's going to sink them even further. Mueller does not want his report to come out. It's exactly like the Russian dossier. It was never supposed to be released. It was Christopher Steele speaking to 6 major news networks at least 11 times on his 17 installments, which was broken up, and now we find out that some of it came from CNN iReport itself. And CNN, of course, is distancing itself from that because why? They don't even monitor what goes up on that. And so it's complete garbage.
It's CNN's fake news.
It's just the garbage
so they
of
use
garbage
fake
of
news
CNN.
from the fake news.
Yes.
Oh, and by the way, there has been no public sighting of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And we got to point this out because there's another fake news story that her trainer came out and said that Ruth is doing rigorous workouts. I mean, really? How dead is she? How long has she been dead? And I want to know about these Supreme Court justices. They need to come forward and tell us about the status of Ruth Ginsburg, if she's dead or if she's incapacitated. And their silence is just adding to the citizens' charges to their high treason. Justice Roberts needs to come out with Ruth by his side, yuck it up, and show us that she is alive.
I totally agree because, I'm sorry, she just had operations. She had broken ribs, and then she had operations in her lungs, and she's doing...
No, 86 years old now, she's doing a rigorous workout. I want to know what they're feeding her. But anyway, I say that because don't be fooled. Fake news is the enemy of the people. We have shown you that propaganda, which comes for 100 years, propaganda has been there to sway you to think differently from what is actually happening in the world. It continues on, and now with fake Fox News is going to be worse because now Disney owns it outright. I think that's going to be March 25th or something. They will own them outright, and that's it. That was the only place where there was, it was controlled opposition, and maybe you thought you were getting good news, but it is still controlled opposition. Get off of Fox. It's fake, it's phony, it's propaganda.
Yes, but Betsy, people will say it's the only thing they have to watch.
No, you can go into the internet and get good independent media people who are doing a great job covering stuff. In fact, our team and our conclave has done more to uncover the crime in Washington than the DOJ and the FBI together. The CIA, that agency needs to go to. These people do nothing, and we are paying them to do nothing but to undermine America.
Yeah, Nellie Orr going to work for Hillary after GPS.
No, let's talk about Nellie and Bruce Orr having dinner with a British Alison Saunders, Queen's operative. She comes over here and she helps finish up the plot to take down Donald Trump. Don't tell me that's not an international affair. And how come we don't have sanctions on Britain for what they're doing?
because Michael Horowitz has not revealed.
Michael Horowitz, a senior executive service swamp creature?
Yeah. He's hiding the FISA court warrant application information.
Well, he can hide it all he wants, but the citizens out here know. And you know what's going to happen? The Queen and her Privy Council, they don't know what we know in the underground. They don't.
No, they don't. Nobody's talking about Arvinda Sambai.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about Alison Saunders. Nobody's talking about VeriSign. Nobody's talking about SES or Serco or the British Control or Stephen Halper. Barely. $1.4 million paid to Stephen Halper to interfere in the election. What's happening? Oh, he's a source and a method. Because he's a source, like Christopher Steele was a source, even though they had to fire him for being a very bad source. What I love is the whole connection to John McCain. We're going to come here in a minute, which I get to say. We said it first.
But don't you think it's
But
just
anyway,
outrageous?
we say all this stuff first because why? As you point out, the people in the District of Crime in Washington are doing nothing except hiding their own criminality. That's all they're doing. The Mueller investigation? No, that is a cover-up of his own crimes. He delivered the yellow cake uranium. He was 100%, he was the director of the Uranium One heist. So he's directly, he met with Putin. You might as well call him
James Comey.
He's in bed with Putin. Putin has got to have a big bed.
What was he doing in New Zealand? What is the FBI director doing in New Zealand a few years back?
You notice there was an earthquake in a place there never was in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Within 24 hours of him arriving there.
Well, we're getting into the weeds. All right,
anyway,
shall we go back now?
No, I'm not done. So here we go with those 3 tweets. You're going to be told, and I told you this before, that the Washington, D.C. sentencing of Manafort will include conspiracy. It does, but not conspiracy. They literally say conspiracy against the United States for bank fraud and for tax fraud. When have you ever heard anybody who was convicted of tax fraud being supposedly accused of conspiracy against the United States? Nonsense. There was no conspiracy. And so I feel sorry for Roger Stone, who's still, now his case has been swept out into the worst area in New York, I believe it is, into the New York Southern District. I'm not sure of that. But anyway, he's been one of the 3 biggest corrupt groups they're going to take on his sentencing and his trial. Jerome Corsi got himself out by apologizing for saying that Seth Rich was part of, was murdered when, of course, Seth Rich was murdered.
You mean Jerome Corsi, who is friends with Robert Mueller long before this started?
Correct.
Uh-huh.
So Manafort and Cohen had so many crimes before they met Trump that the crimes that they've been charged with shows that Mueller wasn't trying hard. I could have charged them with more crimes than that I know of off the top of my head. Okay? Manafort was the most corrupt person next to John Podesta. You want to talk about the 2 most corrupt people for Republicans? Manafort. For the Democrats, it was John Podesta. Has John Podesta been charged? He did all the same things. He worked for the same oligarchs. He put the money in the same banks in the same country and took that money, did not file as a foreign agent. So don't believe any of this. This is called fake justice. Now, this is what's going to happen. Trump is playing them. He can do anything he wants with that Mueller report. He didn't have to release it. Mueller's not his boss. That's stupid. Mueller turns the report in to Barr. Barr looks at it. He decides what he wants to do with it. And when he does, he goes to the president, tells the president what he thinks he should do, and then the president will tell him what to do. That's the way it works, folks. Mueller has no power except to smear with lies and to cover his own trails at the same time. Remember, these are smoke screens. This is a hall of mirrors. This is to say Hillary, who is guilty, is pointing at Trump, who is supposedly guilty, and accusing him of the very crimes that she's guilty of. Now, we're not going to stop. The Democrats aren't going to stop for the next 2 years because they're going to use the 80 releases by Doug Collins and by Devin Nunes of the testimonies, which are only marked committee sensitive. Very wise of them. They can release them literally unredacted except for sources and methods.
But I think that they are finding out, at least I hope they are, that our conclave gets these, even when they're redacted, and we can find things in there that maybe they overlooked. Like when we saw Bruce Orr's testimony and we saw that Nellie worked for VeriSign. Well, that was all bells and whistles to us because we know the dirt about VeriSign.
You had to go through 339 pages of pathetically redacted Nellie Orr emails and material that the Judicial Watch got to be able to come up with the name Allison Saunders. And then you have to figure out that she's a Crown prosecutor. And then you have to realize that she was in on the whole thing with Joseph Mifsud because she's a very good friend of Arvinder Sambai, who was on Robert Mueller's special counsel, and she was a Crown prosecutor also. And they all knew Joseph Mifsud. They were all in these very corrupt organizations we've revealed many times. And along with them was Zanab Ahmad, who was also on the Mueller special counsel, and Andrew Weissman and Ahmad were the first two people in the Justice Department to receive Christopher Steele's first installments of the Russian dossier. What are they doing on the Robert Mueller investigation? That is such collusion.
Well, Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan have asked Barr to explain himself about that.
And what you always point out is it goes back to the Brits. So don't forget.
No, I want to talk about how Gina Haspel is in on this.
Well,
because
she was
in London. She was a CIA director. I don't know was she a section chief or something in London?
She was the, what do you call that, when you're the chief of the whole country?
So she is watching all of this, and is she part of it? Has she given a full report to Donald Trump about how the British were in on it? Or is she just covering up the CIA?
If she hasn't, she needs to go to jail with the rest of them, because she couldn't have avoided this. Sir Jeffrey Patty was openly involved in the newspapers. Malik Brown, Richard Dearlove, all those people. Every single week there was another article about how great George Papadopoulos was, and he's Trump's senior advisor. He was a volunteer who never met Trump.
You know what? George Papadopoulos is going to release his emails that he had back and forth with Alexander Downer.
George Papadopoulos' book, he says, is going to reveal all of this, and I'm sure it will reveal the story that we have been talking about, the way he was pulled in first by Michael Gaeta, and that this started in March. This didn't start in July with Crossfire Hurricane. Those are lies.
Well, Thomas, we're on such a roll, and the next tweet we're going to be looking at the late night shows and federal election commissions. And so I think we'll start a new audio on that. Would you have anything you'd like to wrap up on the tweets we've done so far?
Well, I just want to say that right now we're just sitting back and we're just laughing. We're actually doing research in areas that we haven't had a chance to do research in before, because we're just sitting back and saying, well, everything we predicted is true. The dominoes are falling. It's slow, but it's sure, folks. And it's so bad that Walt Disney, who is just absolutely losing money because of their very bad purchase of Star Wars. But anyway, buying the only conservative network, that is the last vestige of free speech in America on any mainstream media, television, broadcasted, or cable news network. This is the end of free speech, exactly as we've seen it in Europe, as we've seen it in Britain, as we've seen it all over the world, especially in China and soon to be in Russia. And so pretty soon, we will only be controlled by those central agents, whoever they are, who are controlling the cyber realm and telling us what we're supposed to believe, especially because Westerners are so absolutely addicted to the cyber realm. So what we're revealing to you is all of those things are falling. One single domino at a time. As they get in the ring with Trump, Trump knocks them out. Thank you, President Trump.